In this part of our mid-year report, we talk about office and industrial. First, we'd like to thank our sponsors. And now, enjoy the forum.
Well, I'm Bob Mulhern, Senior Managing Director at Colliers International. I'll be leading the AZRE Forum panel today on office and industrial. We have a great panel here, great experience, and we're going to have a good conversation. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We'll start over here with Todd.
Hi, I'm Todd Hamilton with Citywide Commercial, Managing Partner. We specialize in industrial real estate.
CJ Osbrink, Executive Managing Director at Newmark Knight Frank, focused on investment sales for office properties.
Cooper Fradd, Senior Vice President with CBRE, and my focus is on industrial leasing and sales.
Kathy Foster, Senior Vice President with Colliers International. I specialize in aligning companies' culture, mission, and value to their real estate.
I'm Leroy Breinholt, and I'm President and Designated Broker of Commercial Properties, Inc. My specialty with my team is industrial leasing and sales.
So we're going to jump right into our questions. And the first one is, we've had this downturn, right, in all of us, except for, I think, Cooper was just a researcher back in 2008. We were all here 2008, 2009. And how does this feel different than back in 2008, 2009, what we're going through right now? Whoever wants to start.
I was 2008, 2009 during the GFC. I was on the principal side, so I think the two different things that I've gathered out of this is this feels a lot more temporary. It feels much shorter. The last downturn, I think we saw, at least on the principal side as well as the brokerage side, we saw a lot of reckless underwriting, and specific to Phoenix, we saw overbuilding, we saw over leverage, we saw a heavy concentration of companies surrounded around the mortgage, title, and home building business. Whereas this time, we're a much more diversified economy. We have a much more diversified labor force, and so I just I look at the differences between then and now, and I say, we're a lot more sustainable today. So I think actually Phoenix, I know this is a topic we might bring up, is actually headed for a much more pleasant post-recession, post-COVID recession.
And how are you, because I agree on that diversity, and I think that all of our leaders have done a good job on that. How is that diversity helping us out today as we're trying to begin to recover? You want to hit that one, Leroy? Start?
Sure. I think that number one, Arizona is kind of on the map now. I think there's a lot of people from companies from other states that want to be in Arizona, whereas prior to this, we were known as a home building state. And now I think with that diversity you're talking about, we have all sectors of the economy now that are here with manufacturing, distribution, assembly. You have the home building business, which is way different than it was back then. We're building a fraction of the homes because there's been a governor put on the home building business with the fact we can't get labor, which is actually, in my opinion, has been a good thing. So, there's a lack of inventory in the residential market. And so those contractors that before were boom and bust, and they busted in 2008, 2009, are going strong. There's lots of runway ahead to still keep building the residential market as well as the commercial market. And just a lot, like I said, a lot more diversity. And it feels a lot more temporary, for sure. That's the way I feel.
And what as we go around, you're gonna see that we have industrial panelists and office, and Kathy, the field is different than office and industrial, so where do you feel like the office?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest differences that I see from 2008 to current is that in 2008, when there was a downturn, corporate real estate wasn't prepared. And through this process, they've learned over the last number of years to make sure that they have a flexible and agile workplace, to make sure that they've got options in their lease that can give them that ability to be flexible. So even though we're, again, not utilizing space and corporate users are looking at how they're going to utilize it going forward, especially with work from home, at least they've got some flexibility built in within their overall portfolio to prepare for something like this.
I agree.
I have some thoughts on that.
Sure,
too.
absolutely,
I
Tom.
guess the biggest difference, industrial's clear winner this time around. I mean, it's clear that office it's going to struggle, retail is going to struggle, hospitality, but industrial is the clear darling. Where back in 2008, we were not the space you wanted to work in because of all the home building and home builders and all these other suppliers going out of business. And it's great right now. I just don't know if we've seen the pain yet.
Mm-hmm.
That's my only concern. So it's fantastic right now. So.
And Bob, you're right. I was in research in 2008, so I was the one reporting all the bad news to the brokers every quarter. Vacancies going up and up and up.
Right, your fault.
And so exactly, yeah. Joe Porter thought it was. I think what's different this time around, to Todd's point, sorry, that's an editable part. To Todd's point, we're pretty early on in this process, but vacancy in industrial, we ticked up from 5.6% to 5.9% from the first quarter to second quarter. A lot of that was going to happen whether COVID hit or not, due to spec projects completing that hadn't been leased yet. In 2008 and 9, our vacancy jumped from 8% to 16%. And I think this time around, we're much more disciplined, or have been.
Right.
Of all the construction that's going on in industrial, 40% of it is pre-leased right now. There's 13 million square feet under construction, so quite a bit. Back in 07 and 08, only 10 to 15% of that was pre-committed, pre-leased space. So much healthier this time around.
So I think Todd made a comment, industrial guy, saying, office is going to struggle. I think there's perceptions and there's realities, and there's always these gaps. And Kathy, what do you think the biggest gap, if people are listening, between what they think is going on in office and what's actually going on in office?
Sure.
Right now?
I think we haven't really seen the effects on office and as far as rental rates, where I think the perception is everybody's working from home, so landlords are not filling up their buildings and therefore rates are dropping. But most landlords are still collecting on their rents. And really corporations are just trying to figure out, and companies, what their next move is. So we haven't seen that effect. I think there will be some sort of fallout as some of the stimulus and et cetera, another edible moment. So I think we'll see an overall downturn. We're 16% now. And I think that that's going to probably be another, 2 to 5% within the next 6 months as far as vacancy. We've got now just over 500,000 square feet of sublease space, but I think that is yet to come. What we're seeing is landlords give on concessions. They're not really pushing for 5-year terms. They're giving a little bit more in free rent. They're being a little bit more flexible on their terms, but overall, I haven't seen a huge impact.
So, Leroy, again, you guys do so many deals. I mean, you get a real sense of the blue collar world. What do you think the biggest gap between reality, what they're experiencing, and the perception of what's going on out there?
Well, the old saying, perception isn't reality, or it's very seldom reality. It's kind of true, because we're getting tenants and some landlords that think the world is just caved in and they should be getting all those concessions and they should be getting reduced rental rates. And the reality of it is, if you start with the investment market, I mean, there's hardly anything to buy. It's good, solid, cap rate, multi-tenant product. And so about anything you can find to buy, you're going to sell. And that's because buildings are well occupied. And I anticipate as this thing dissipates, which it's going to, I think, in the near future, we'll get past this. We'll look back in 6 months or a year and go, wow, it was a bad dream. And as it does, I think the vacancy may go up a little bit in the industrial. But at the same time, it's not reality of what the perception is. It's far less impacted, I think. So far, like Todd said, could see more of an impact down the road. We don't know for sure, right? We have political things going on. We have, this COVID thing going on. And how will that trickle down? For sure, we don't know. But it feels like it's better than what perception really is. That's what I feel anyway. Busiest could be had. One of the better Junes I've had in 34 years. Yeah. And a lot of that was the smaller leasing I find has been pretty good, really good actually. The mid-tier, that 10 to 20 or 30,000 feet of leasing has been a little slower. But the investment market we talked about, but the user market, very strong also. The user buildings to purchase, very few of them, a lot of demand. interest rates at all-time lows.
Yeah, so speaking of interest rates, I mean, CJ, again, what do you think people's perceptions on what's going on out there in the debt and equity world versus what you see actually going on specifically here in Arizona?
Yeah, I think the perception is folks look at the GFC and they think heavy distress, right? Because that's what they know. They went through it and they said, hey man, if we had the capital we had then, today we would be investing. And so the perception is that there's a lot of distress. There's new distress funds being raised. The reality is that there is not for office specifically. There is for retail and hospitality. For office, it perhaps was a legacy distress issue. So it was already kind of heading in that loan maturity distress direction. So we're not necessarily seeing distress right now for office. For April, May, and June, rent collections were very positive, actually much better than expected. We're seeing landlords say they've gotten north of 90%, some like only 2 or 3 tenants in their multi-tenant building that requested rent relief. So the perception is there's distress, the reality is there's not. With interest rates have gone up, and then lending parameters have certainly tightened a little bit. Lenders are being overly cautious, and then if you're a lender, you have to tour property. Getting out and traveling and touring is very difficult today. So we have seen that with a pullback, but candidly, over the last 3 to 4 weeks, we've had deals in the market. We've received over 8 term sheets from lenders on deals. They're getting more and more aggressive. So just as you normally see with this kind of situation, you're going to see lenders more that come into the pool, and then pricing gets more competitive. So the one thing I will say that we have seen is there is a price discount. If you just look at the correlation between interest rates and then pricing, if interest rates go up, pricing is likely going to go up, right? And so we have seen that. Rent roll volatility as well, we've seen some price discounts for it. But if folks are coming in, investors are coming in and just looking just for a COVID discount because you're hoping that somebody is just looking to fire sell, they're going to have a hard time with respect to office right now.
And then Todd, one point made by CJ is just seeing space, and the practical piece of that's part of real estate is kind of kicking the tires, so to speak. How are people seeing space today differently than they did in January and February?
We're managing. I mean, we have a lot of tours. To echo what Leroy said, we've done more leasing in the last 6 weeks than I think this COVID is kind of, it's not as bad as we expected for our activity. And so we've been out there. Yeah, it's a little bit more challenging to put on a mask and make sure your client has a mask and things like that. But we've still managed to get through the properties. If it's if there's a tenant in place, it's a little bit more difficult because then you're coordinating with those people and being sensitive to touring in their space. But if it's a vacant space, it's very simple. Just make sure that you're wearing a mask and you carry a couple masks for your clients and you go look at the space.
Sure.
But I think that the interesting part with industrial is it wasn't as bad as we expected, and so I hope it stays that way. But occupancy is very high in the smaller industrial world.
So Cooper, how about at CB? Are you guys doing anything different than you did not that long ago?
A few things that we've done differently. We certainly have more video tours or offering our listings viewable on video much more than we did so in the past. We've done a handful of deals almost all the way through without the client actually viewing the space. Not many, but a handful. Just due to travel restrictions. And I think that industrial, you can accomplish so much from a video tour, a CAD plan of the space. I think it's not as important as maybe office or retail for the tenant to actually get inside the space and see it. Industrial is so much more about location and functionality of the building that you can accomplish much more without viewing the space. But similar to Todd, when we do have tours, we're in masks, and in industrial, you're in a big wide open warehouse, so there's plenty of room for everybody to spread out and maintain proper social distancing.
Yeah, and I know in our office, there's been some really big deals gotten done. Big decisions being made via video because people who just can't come, they still need to make decisions. So that's been good news. And without bashing California too bad, do you think it's this good everywhere, or do you think maybe Arizona is benefiting by some of the woes of the other states around us?
Absolutely. There are so many. We get calls every day from investors, tenants. People want to buy here. People want to. I mean, I get calls from Chicago Washington, California, and and even from Texas. I mean, Texas can't take everyone, right? And so we're going
they can.
right. They
Right.
can, but they're not going to get everyone. So I think we're a big beneficiary of some of California is quite draconian, and so is Illinois, and all these other. There are going to be a lot of winners and losers,
Right.
and I think clearly we're going to be a big winner. Arizona is going to be a big winner. I think our governor has handled this very well, and I think that we are kind of we're a spread out community. We're not like a Manhattan or some of these other communities. So I think people are going to continue to flood.
So Kathy, on the office side, I mean, I get this question asked, I don't know how many times a week, that says, well, I know that people are moving here, I know there's jobs being created, but is anybody ever gonna go back to the office? Is anybody ever gonna lease a space again? What are you finding as far as people trying to decide, these big, occupiers, what they're gonna do with their space?
Absolutely. I will answer that, but I'm going to pile on for 1 second on Arizona being the winner. We don't rely on public transportation. So, and going back to what some of the corporate occupiers are doing, is that they're looking at models more of a spoken wheel. So they've got the hub, maybe downtown, New York City or Chicago, but they're looking at smaller, offices throughout, whether it's like Regis type offices or other satellite offices, so that people don't all have to get onto public transportation in order to get to the office. So I think for Arizona, that's definitely a real winner.
Yeah.
And then on the corporate user side, a lot of uncertainty. I don't think anyone really knows. I mean, we are going through not only the health crisis, but we've also got the financial crisis. We have the social unrest right now, and then of course we've got the political crisis, I guess you could say, going on as well. So a lot of uncertainty. Work from home is working out very well for most companies. I think they're surprised. There's a lot of corporations that would have never done this whole work from home or thought that it could never work, and I think they're pleasantly surprised. I do think the pendulum will shift back and forth depending on what happens with COVID-19. I think work from home is here to stay, but I don't see companies doing this 100% or a large majority from work from home, just because they lose that culture and that connection to their mission. And while their employees that they know that they've had employed for a long period of time are at home and functional, bringing in and onboarding new employees that you're not accustomed to working with, I think is going to be a challenge. So there will be some negative effect, I think, to the office in the short term, but I think overall people are anxious to get back, and they still need that connection, to the company mission.
Don't forget having young kids at home too. It's always another
Yes,
challenge.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I say we should give an award to every time an announcement's made in California, and most recently it was from the teachers union that has all these demands that have nothing to do with schools or even kids. It just thinks it's another reason to come this way, but then once you're here, again, we are dealing with the kids. So I think that history has shown us that some companies over time have tried to do a lot of work at home, and it seems like they always come back to something less than that. So I do think there is something about culture that's really valuable.
And I think it's socially acceptable now, where before, if you were on a Zoom call, you were maybe lazy.
Right.
Too lazy to drive out to see the client. But I have clients now that have saved hours because they don't have to drive to this site or this meeting, and they're so productive. So I think it's just because it's a little bit more socially acceptable.
I mean, when people used to say work from home,
Right.
and you kind of laugh and smirk and go, sure, you're working from home, but
Right.
now you say I'm working from home, and it's it's obviously the new normal for now. So that is a very good point.
And I,
Go ahead.
sorry,
Don't you think that'll be more for like the Class A product, the larger companies? Because it seems like the small to medium-sized companies, they need more of the synergy, and they don't have the technological tools to monitor the production of employees and what's going on. They don't have the expensive software programs to figure out, things are getting done properly. So it seems like, I don't know, but it seems like the B class, maybe the condo market may not be affected nearly as much as maybe the A class.
that could be,
The larger
that too,
corporate.
and if they're building their culture, I don't think you can build a culture
Exactly.
through a Zoom call.
Right.
Although I personally, I felt more connected to clients and colleagues than I ever have, and I've heard that from clients too, because before it was always conference calls. You and I were joking about
We
this
were
before.
joking.
The whole art of multitasking on a conference call is over because everyone sees your face now. But you would just be sitting on a conference call, where now everybody does Zoom calls. So you're really connecting with people. You're looking at what's in their house, their dogs, their cats, who's crying in the background. And I actually think that it's brought teams closer. And so I think, to your point, before it was work from home, now it's a different work from home model.
I 100% agree on the personal element to it. It's a personal connection, whereas before you're, like this kind of talking about business only. You don't have kids running around. You don't have, your daughter's asking for, milk refill. It is a personal element, and I think it lets everybody know, hey, we're all human. We're all in this together. So I agree. It's been that's been some silver lining.
I think that's a positive. Yeah.
Very much so. I mean, when I was Zooming you and you had that cat apartment in your background.
Talking to me?
No. One more plug for Arizona. Another reason why I think we're going to thrive. Our budget, I don't think, has been hit as bad as some of these other states. And so I think we're going to be, look at, Illinois is a mess. New Jersey, California is a mess. We've been very fiscally responsible. And so I think that's another, maybe our tax will stay a little lower. Maybe we can incentivize more companies to come here, but I think we're in a much better position.
I think an important piece of the communication to those listening is that in all reality, that you can actually feel this in the market. You actually can see these companies, they're calling, they're in a hurry, they're anxious, they don't know a lot about the market. I had a gentleman call me that I hadn't talked to literally in 30 years. And he was in Southern California, says, I gotta get out. I looked on LinkedIn, you're the only guy I know, put me in touch with who in your office can help me with this. And he was literally starting from scratch. And I followed up with him, and they said, no, the guy is serious. He is bringing his business to California. To Arizona from California. Now, when you get this much demand on the industrial space, it actually begins to impact the space. So how do you feel that we're changing? Are we seeing more manufacturers, Cooper? Are we seeing, big, small? Where do you feel the biggest impact's coming?
We certainly are seeing more activity, I think, across the board for two reasons. One, just nationally, what COVID has done to industrial space, the e-commerce world. I've heard multiple real estate execs from retail companies say that this is the tip of the iceberg for e-commerce. There's such a large segment of the population that never did online shopping before, never signed up for 1 hour delivery, and they were forced to. And the saying is it takes 45 days to change a habit. And so this whole segment of the population is now ordering online, causing e-commerce to boom. And so that's happening nationally. And then specifically in Arizona, everything that you all just talked about, the companies relocating from California, we're really starting to see reshoring of manufacturing. Arizona is a great place for that to occur. And we also have a large amount of developable industrial land remaining. A lot of major cities are built out, Seattle, Portland, it's very difficult to find land to develop. In Phoenix, we're blessed. In the last recession, it was a curse because we overbuilt, but this time we've been so much more disciplined, and we have options for these manufacturers that want to relocate here.
Now, we have a lot of space, but you also hear activity going on in Tucson and Pinal County. You see some big manufacturers. What do you think about that going on these days, Leroy?
I think it's wonderful. We didn't see that until just the last few years, where these companies are going a little bit out the outlying areas, which really fuels the growth both there and kind of pushes inward too. So I think it's fantastic that that's happening. The Nicolas of the world, for instance, that are a manufacturing facility. Exactly. I think it's great. I think that's and it's going to fuel the residential market more, which is going to fuel the retail market because they need retail to service it. My only concern is, I'm an optimist, I'm an eternal optimist, I always am. My only concern is we need to learn from why we're benefiting by a lot of these things that are happening and why companies are coming from other states. And it puts an onus on us as real estate brokers and as business people to make sure that we keep a business-friendly state. Because if we don't, and we don't work on this, and aren't diligent with it, it'll get away from us. And we'll turn around in 3, 4, 5 years or 10 years, whatever, and go, wow, what happened? The red tape and the regulations and all the things that you find, it's almost impossible to do business in Seattle or in California, a lot of parts of California. New York, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Good luck. So we just have to be very careful too, to make sure that we are aware of that. We support the proper agendas with that, and that we don't just fall asleep and go, things are great, we're doing our businesses, we're doing fine, and forget what got us there. I'm a 5th generation Arizona. My 11 grandkids are 7th generation.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of vested interest here to do what I can to try to keep this state to where it's been and where it is, and not let it get away from us.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be very careful about that.
Yeah, I agree, because that point, I was listening, I've listened to a number of the governor's press conferences, and I liked where this one, we're trying to deliver something to the state, he was asking about a contract, and it was slowing down because of COVID, and the governor listened to the whole point, and he said at the end, he says, you don't need to just move your manufacturing here, because we didn't close that manufacturing here in Arizona. And I think that message is playing big
Resonates.
for the industrial. And does the money recognize this? I mean, you've been positive, but I mean, are they seeing that we're doing this better than last time around when we let everything get out of hand, do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves when you just look at, how much spec office or office under construction we have, just over 3 million square feet, and of that pre-leased, it's over 50%. When you look at the last GFC, we had over 5 million square feet, and it was like 15%. And don't quote me on the exact numbers, but it was roughly 15% pre-leased. And so, those numbers speak for themselves, but I think overall, the fundamentals for the Arizona economy speak for themselves. When you look at, whether it's an investor coming in to buy, you look at the cap rate yield difference between, Southern California and Arizona, you look at the per foot, we're still way below replacement costs on a lot of deals. I mean, our top watermark pricing right now for multi-tenant office is, in the low to mid 300s, for multi-tenant suburban office. I mean, when you're looking at those numbers compared to Southern California, which is over $1,000 a foot, the Bay Area, which is the same, I mean, it's a real huge relative discount. And so, that alone speaks for itself. So we are seeing investors that are saying, okay, we're either, and this is a lot of it pre-COVID, right? But I don't think that that dynamic is going to shift too much post-COVID, because, the metrics were heavily compressed and the competition was fierce in gateway markets where you have foreign capital, REIT, institutional. And out here, now you're seeing more institutional. You're seeing foreign capital from the Middle East and South Korea, Asia. So you're seeing more and more of a diverse buyer pool.
Sure. Now, also another problem with a lot coming at one time is there certain product types that we can find ourselves short on. Is there a product in the market that we are lacking, or parts of the valley that we're lacking? A certain product that people are looking for these days?
Cold storage, I think, in the Metro Phoenix industrial market is certainly one that we're lacking. We haven't seen a rush yet of cold storage users. I'm hearing it from my colleagues in Dallas, Chicago, some of the bigger cities. So I think that Phoenix is not far away from cold storage, but that is one area in industrial that we're lacking. The second would be pure manufacturing buildings that already have upgraded power, upgraded parking counts, additional land for storage. We don't have many pure manufacturing buildings, but that's also causing users to do build-to-suits, and we do have the land for them to build on.
How about in your product, Leroy, especially in East Valley, what's going on there?
Yeah, there are definitely, I gotta be careful, I don't wanna share all those ideas that I wanna share with my clients, with all my friendly competitors. I'm joking, but I'm serious too. But yeah, there are definitely some niche market opportunities in the small to medium bay product. In certain areas where there's huge growth, residential, and there's not enough supply to service it. The difficulties are still a delta, because construction costs have gone up so much. There's still a delta between the lease rates that are currently out there and what it costs to construct it. And so we built a building in Queen Creek a couple of years ago and told the owner, well, we're probably gonna get $1 to $1.10 gross. Everything in Chandler Gilbert's like 70 to 80 cents. We got $1.45. We turned around quickly and sold it to a California 1031 buyer at $156 a foot, which for a front-loaded incubator, literally common restrooms, is a pretty good price per foot, $156 a foot.
Right.
And we still lease it, so we're doing okay. Keeping the ship afloat, we're doing fine. But there are some definite market kind of niches and opportunities there that I think somebody needs to take advantage of in the near future. Yes.
And I think, Todd, in our last industrial call in the office, everybody was excited except those who did kind of smaller multi-tenant industrial in the West Valley. They said there just is not enough of that. Do you agree with that, or is anybody, because nobody's developing that, is there enough?
Yeah, I think first of all, can we add that he doesn't have a cat tree? Or a cat apartment, that was completely joke.
I
that for
I
like
don't
five
wanna,
minutes.
I don't wanna get beat up
I thought
later.
you were talking to somebody behind me. I didn't know you were
I'm
talking to
so
me, Todd.
kidding.
Thanks.
Keep that in there.
He doesn't,
I want
he
a
doesn't
blooper,
have
I want a blooper reel, and that's
He
gonna be
doesn't
funny
have
right there.
Okay, so,
guys feel like
I
Yes.
just, there's a disconnect, you can't build it and get the rents
That's
that
what
you
I was gonna
need.
ask you.
The construction costs are so high. And, I mean, it's amazing what you did out there, and we're pushing rates. We're pushing rates up, but still not to the point where it justifies new construction for the smaller stuff.
Right.
I mean, 10,000 square feet plus, I think you can make those numbers work. But I mean, to Cooper's point about the manufacturing, we need more manufacturing. I mean, who knew that 94% of our pharmaceuticals came from China? I mean, I don't think a lot of us knew that, but that's a big eye opener.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a problem. You know, if China just cuts off our, Viagra supply, I mean, we're gonna have a big problem.
That's your problem. We don't-
That's
That's okay there, Todd.
Not mine. Anyway, maybe we should not keep that. So,
You're gonna be
There's gonna be a
completely
big
bleeped out of this whole
flip.
thing.
so,
Nice to work for your own company and not in corporate.
Yeah.
You can say stuff like that.
right. So, but
Yeah.
the point is, I think we're going to, another winner or another loser will be China. And a lot of those jobs will come to America, finally. And if you really think about Arizona, just to talk about Arizona again.
Yeah.
I mean, we are right next to the 5th largest economy in the world, California. And like you said, they keep pushing them out. And Mexico's very strong. You know, they can't take all of the manufacturing. So, and Texas has received so much, influx of people. So we're in a great position. So the next 20 years are going to be really good. I mean, Cooper is going to be sad.
Well, the other thing that I think is important that people don't talk a lot about with Arizona is we have essentially no natural disasters. It gets very hot, but for these high-tech manufacturing companies, the Russian data centers that we saw purchase land over the last 18 months in the West Valley, I mean, no natural disasters is also very important to a lot of these techier manufacturing users.
As long as you have AC and a backup generator,
Yeah.
you don't have a
Exactly.
looming 9.0 earthquake,
Right.
that's for sure.
So we've kind of hit on winners and losers, and we've talked about some of the states. We've talked about even some different economies. Are there what about in the actual business? Okay, businesses that we see right now thriving and moving out there in either office or industrial. What do they have in common versus those that seem to be frozen? What you guys say?
Well, those that are frozen, I think are, they're in the entertainment business or they're doing, any kind of, large group gatherings, right? Doing concerts and big company venues, We just had a tenant that's been in the food business. In fact, they've been a supplier to ASU of all their, extracurricular lunches and dinners and events and that kind of thing. They just went out of business after 20-something years because that industry has been hurt the most. So there's certain segments like that have really been impacted negatively, but I think overall, most of them, like you're talking about manufacturing and distribution and assembly and, manufacturing is going to come back. I think it's already starting to slowly from China and other places to come here to Arizona. So I think that we're poised pretty well. But the good thing too is money's available, and it's not like it was in 2008 when you could fog a mirror, you get money.
Right.
That's part of the problem that led to that whole issue. But
Right.
Money's really available and interest rates are low, and if you can show that you're making money, there's funds available to grow your business, and there's again an economic or a political climate that's positive towards growth of business. There's a lot of good things like that. So overall, construction market's a big one, and that's strong.
I think what you're seeing too, I mean, you have to remember back in January, I was telling my guys the biggest problem we have is we don't have space to lease, right? And I've been telling some of the people that I work with, their biggest problem is they couldn't find anyone to hire. So, COVID has kind of reset that. But I think that if you were doing well, and you can afford to buy a building, I mean, the government, the SBA right now is if you close a deal before September 27th, and consult with your financial person. So I've heard, if you close a deal, they will pay, the SBA, the government will pay 6 months of your principal and interest. That's never happened before. I mean, we've got excited when, the SBA would waive their fees, right? But now you have historically low rates. The government paying 6 months of your principal and interest payments. I mean, our biggest problem, I think, right now is to find available property for sale. You just can't do it.
You know, I mean, I think with, back to, you know, the winners and losers of this on the office side, I think one of the things that we've seen is, you know, let's start with, you know, some of the guys that are gonna have more difficult challenges ahead, co-working. Co-working is just for fear alone, and the amount of common space that they share, it's gonna look a lot different. I'm not saying it's not gonna exist. I think there's certain co-working businesses that work pretty well, more traditional, who would have thought, because the more modernized co-working where everything's open and is going to have a hard time, I think, temporarily, at least in the short term. You know, any office tenants we've had, you know, office deals that we're selling where, you know, there's tenants that are overly exposed to hotels, hospitality, they're going to have temporary short-term challenges as well. Where we've seen actually a great success is, you know, we're selling a deal right now that's close to 200 million in Tempe that has DoorDash as the main tenant. DoorDash was a pre-IPO company, so online food delivery, if you weren't delivering food before, you're certainly doing it now. They went from a $13 billion company to $16 billion through COVID. And so, I mean, that's the type of tenant that you're gonna see, you know, actually go, you know, it's a big winner. And I think the tenants that got in, that, you know, like that tenant, for example, that had, you know, their space plans ready but weren't quite moved in yet, that were growing into space is a winner as well, because now you need, you know, for where you were going to stack, you know, maybe call center space before, now you need more space, right? So this actually could end up working to a benefit if you have more space requirements for social distancing.
Sure, sure. At one time, Phoenix was criticized because we were spread out, right? And we weren't centralized enough, and the buildings weren't big enough, and there weren't enough parking garages. And how's it all playing into our favor now, Kathy? What do you see on the office side? An important insight, I think, for people.
Absolutely, and I would agree with you. I think there's going to be a little bit of a equal out, if you will, of space needs. I have a company that recently purchased an HQ. It's like 250,000 square feet. They had the plans, COVID hit, they ripped up the plans and started all over. They still are using the same amount of space. They're going from 1,400 seats to 900 seats in the same amount of space. All the phone rooms are gone, all of the, you know, game rooms and ping pong tables and all of those things, at least for the short term, are gone. But they still need the same amount of space because of that social distancing, and they're offsetting their work from home strategy to make up for that space. And I would agree with you too that the entertainment industry is really impacted, because that industry, they need to be together in order to be creative and create. So that's a massive issue for them. And then freezer space, working with some food distributors, and they can't find freezer space. And I'm starting to see, it's not really co-working of freezer space, but like shared freezer space where you can rent. And they've got some really big names, and I'm seeing that a lot, especially in Canada. I don't know if anybody out here has done that, but I'm seeing that as a very popular trend, so that as these companies that are distributing food, they can be agile just like the office user was back in the day of using WeWork and Regis, etc. And I would agree. I think the co-working space, that's where I'm seeing a lot of my clients that are stepping out and terminating those agreements, because those spaces usually were for, you know, one person, 6 people. Well, now it's proven you can work from home. You really don't need that space, and they can't control the safety there because of the shared amount of space. So I would agree.
So on that front, on just the office users, I think people sometimes see office buildings, they say, oh, every office building's the same. But I think, to your point, Leroy, if they have a lot of these uses, they have a lot of co-working space, they have a big, travel, sector here, they have this there, versus another office building that might have, some of these tenants are expanding significantly. That will start to play a role in how well you might find, or how willing you might find your landlord to cooperate with you.
And I think having a lot more mid-rise offices out here is a benefit, because the biggest issue, most of the clients that I've talked to, we can solve the hand sanitizing, wear a mask. The elevator has been the largest issue. And some of the elevators in New York and Chicago, they hardly fit, 2 to 4 people. and you're looking at 30, 50 stories. So the elevator has been a massive issue, and I see a lot of companies that are shifting to let's look at low-rise buildings where people can walk up and down the stairwells.
So with all of the changes going on, and we've talked about winners and losers and parts of the valley maybe even that might have more interest than even us versus other states. But what do you see is the biggest opportunity in the market right now? If you were a company coming in, what do you think that you would be looking for? And it might not be even just investment, but even to say I want to become part of this Arizona economy in the long run for, Libra, maybe you have a thought on this because you've been here, your family's been here the longest. I mean, this is a land of opportunity. What is that opportunity, would you say?
Well, I like to think that it's, the multi-tenant industrial market, because that's what I do, but that's what I know the best by far. But one thing too, a lot of times when you live here and you do business here, you ride the roller coaster ride, you remember what it was like, 12, 13 years ago in the downturn, and you're a little nervous, right? I think those that are coming in from out of town that experience a lot of other things that aren't as favorable for business as they are here, they're probably actually more apt to take advantage of our opportunities because they look at it and say, that's the place we really want to be. We've been here. This doesn't work well. This is a pain. We're getting sued over the craziest little employee issues. And I can give you example after example of that in other states. And so Arizona just seems like it's just simple. It's, maybe it's a little bit more cowboy way because that's kind of the way we were years ago. And I think we've advanced a lot, but we're still kind of really more down to earth, I think, compared to a lot of the states. And so I think those people from out of state, they look at it and say, so what? It's a 6 cap or a 6.2 cap, and maybe I want a 7 cap. Forget a cap rate. They're gonna look back in 5 years and go, wow, wish I'd done a lot more. Kind of like most of us are doing. Looking back going, wow, 5 years ago, I wish I'd have bought a bunch of freestanding industrial buildings or even multi-tenant buildings, right? I mean, I've said that a lot, Cooper and Todd. I know I have. So I think those that are coming in from out of town are just, you can't just blindly go, I want to buy that, I'll just buy that, but not be too nervous about the value add part of it and just go, I'm buying this product. I know that the future's good because construction costs are a lot more than what I can buy this product for today. That's the big delta that makes it worth buying that product. So I think those are probably gonna be the winners.
Sure. I agree, Leroy, and we almost have this perfect storm right now where you have all these companies relocating here, considering relocating here, and then you have all these people, employees, future employees relocating here also. And then Leroy, to your point about pricing, in Southern California, industrial buildings are $200 a foot plus. Industrial land can be up to $40 a foot. So I think we also have to change our perception here of what market is, what you can afford, and then the appreciation. So $150 a foot today in Phoenix, it's not that's a fair price depending on the building. So I think we have a lot of room for growth in pricing as well to hopefully keep up with the construction costs.
Agreed. Well, I agree with that. Everything is going from retail to e-tail. And I think what this has done is just accelerated. It's basically COVID has accelerated all trends, I believe. If there was a trend, you can just see that trend being accelerated with warehouse space. And so I think that you're right. Anything industrial in Phoenix could be a very viable investment for a long period of time. So
well, part of that, Todd, is too, we're not just a residential construction market like we were 12 years ago.
Right.
We have this diversity that's so much different, so much bigger. We were always boom and bust because it was all built on residential construction, right?
Exactly.
And when that went down or interest rates went up, whatever stuff that happened in the lending market, we died.
Yeah.
And I don't see us, we're going to have issues up and down, no doubt. I don't see us dying like we did before.
And I think it's a great point, and I think, again, going back to diversity, you guys got to think about, we have one of the largest universities in the country here with one of the top-rated engineering schools. And this is coming from a U of A Wildcat, so it pains me to say that, but all joking aside, ASU is a huge driver for us. And you're graduating over 25,000 students a year there. And they're looking, where do I want to live? Do I go to California where I have to rent and I can't afford a home? Or do I want to maybe look into Gilbert where I can do a brand new startup home, right? I can afford it, right? And then I can commute to work. And so when you look at that, you look at what are the opportunities for somebody that's, graduating from college. You have cost cost of living, corporate or income tax rates, style of living, infrastructure, like we talked about earlier. When you're a company looking to migrate out here as well, you think of those things. You think of, do we have access to labor? You certainly do. You have access to a millennial labor force as well, which is driving a lot of IT jobs as well, not just the construction and home building. So there are plenty of opportunities from, whether you're just, an individual moving out here, a company moving out here, or an investor looking to come out here. Because on the investor front, coming from Southern California, I mean, we've talked about relative discounts. It is a huge relative discount.
Right.
I did graduate from ASU, and Dr. Crow, I'll tell you, he is, and I'm part of the ASU President's Club,
Oh, yeah.
he's a genius.
Yeah, great
The
job.
man just knows his stuff. It doesn't matter what all the peripheral stuff, tells him or does. He just does his thing, and he's a brilliant man.
So we're almost out of time, and CJ brought up ASU. Is there anything else you think that maybe a key factor, which I think ASU is, that we haven't brought up so far that you think should come?
I think, and Cooper may know more about this than I do, I don't know, but I mean, one of the biggest things that could impact Arizona is Taiwan Semiconductor. That's a $12 billion investment into Arizona. That will be a huge deal. And so that's something to watch, and that I hear will be announced in August.
Yeah.
So maybe Cooper could speak more to that.
Well, I completely agree with you. And look at Intel and Chandler, all the jobs that brought, the rooftops, all the ancillary companies that supply Intel that locate around there. It touches so many parts of our economy that, yeah, I agree the Taiwanese company will have the same exact effect, and excited for it to get announced. And it'll be a big win for the state.
All the different other ancillary companies that
That'll support
Right,
that company,
support that.
absolutely.
So anyway, that'll be great to hear.
Something else we missed, Leroy? Anything else?
No, sir, I don't think.
Kathy,
Learned a lot.
thoughts?
No, I think I'm good too.
No, this has been great, and industrial's the short-term winner, but anybody in Metro Phoenix, I think, has a really long positive runway ahead of us.
So one thing we didn't hit on, but also ask Kathy to kind of finish us off. Construction costs were going up, even pushing out certain deals couldn't get done because of TIs. Is there any sense of relief on that end, or is it still?
It's really interesting in some states, because as you know, I do work around the globe. In some states, we are seeing construction costs going down, which is helping some of those deals get done. But in other states, we're not. We're actually seeing it going up. So it's kind of odd because it does depend on from state to state.
How about in Phoenix? Is your sense we're going to be going up or down in the next 6 months? Would you say, as far as TI costs?
That's a great question. I might even push that one over to you. Up.
I agree.
It's going up.
Yeah.
There's a shortage of labor. You have a residential market that's a huge driver, and it's not slowing down. I mean, permits are up right now, and they need to continue to go up because we're not meeting supply.
Right.
We're not meeting demand.
Right.
Supply is not meeting demand.
That's what we didn't talk about. I mean, I think that our economy was driven so much from residential, and that really hasn't come back as much as we had. And so imagine, we've diversified our economy, we've absorbed all this space, and now the biggest engine of Arizona historically is now coming back in full force. I mean,
With a shortage of supply.
Exactly.
Unlike 12 years ago.
So thank you guys, panelists. As you can see, anybody that had a chance to watch this, these great people. Thank you for AZRE magazine for bringing us together, and we look forward sometime when we can actually meet face to face or in a large group again. But in the meantime, this has been a great format. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Bob.
Bob.